quiz. During a burn test of a candle, which of the following options would warrant an immediate fail of the candle that you are testing? A, sooting of the flame. B, a constant flickering flame. C, mushrooming of the wick. D, not getting a full melt pool during the 4-hour burn session. E, all of the above. Or F, none of the above. Do you have your answer? You can write it down in the comment section below. Let me know what your answer is. Pause this video. I will give you just a moment. Drum roll. The answer is F, none of the above. I don't think that any of these would warrant by themselves on their own, just looking at it in a single observation, would warrant a fail of the overall candle. And this is really what I want to dive into today, because I feel like a lot of makers are making this mistake to where we are looking at the candle in individual single components. We're almost thinking about every single aspect of the candle, and we're looking for all these different things that could be going wrong during the burn test, instead of looking at the candle as a whole. I like to think about the whole burn testing process in a more holistic approach, if you will. I like to look at everything as a whole, not individual single components and observations. I like to look at, okay, well, this is happening in this moment, but what is the candle doing as a whole while I see those little observations? And before I get any further into today's video, I do want to give you a free gift. It is a completely free download of my candle testing sheet. So whether you are stuck in the testing phase, you're about to enter the candle testing phase, or you just want to gain some insight into what I look for during each session of the burn cycle when I'm testing candles, you can download that for free below. So I'll have it right here, and I'll also have it down in the pinned comment down below. So there is one thing that I want to make very clear in today's video. There are definitely components and things that can happen during a burn test that will absolutely warrant a fail of a candle. Mainly if you go over what the ASTM guidelines are, what they say, there's very obvious ones. If the candle damages the surface it's sitting on, if it tips over or spills on its own, I don't know how, if the candle cracks or breaks, and if the flame is over 3 inches, these are all things that you'd be thinking like, okay, yeah, these are obvious fails of the candle. But there's that middle ground. There's that limbo that we all find ourselves in, to where it's like, this is a good candle. Like, this seems like overall it's performing well, but man, during the 6th burn, like, I noticed a little bit of soot coming off of it, or I noticed that the mushroom, like, there's a little bit, of a mushroom, starting to build up on the wick. And I feel like that's a fail, because that's something that you don't want to have. Like, I feel like we have this almost unrealistic expectation of just creating the most flawless, perfect candle in any condition. And I'm here to tell you that no matter what, you will not make a perfect candle. As I've said before in previous videos, I do not make perfect candles, and I bet more than anything that I can make any candle, regardless of price, burn terribly just by the way that I burn it. I could have fans going everywhere. I could blow it out after 10 minutes every single time I lit it. I could let it stay lit for, 10 hours at a time, and then have drafts going, whatever it is. Like, there's ways of having very good performing candles in ideal conditions burn very poorly in unideal conditions. But my main point of today's video is I don't want you failing candles based on one singular observation during a burn test. If it has something to do with soot, mushrooming, hang up of wax, melt pool, whatever it is, like, it can take some time of going through the entire lifespan of the candle and documenting the process. You're just collecting information. And that's what my candle testing sheet really is about, is it's about collecting information as you are going through that burn cycle of your candle, and test after test, 4-hour burn after 4-hour burn, and really gaining an understanding of how your candle is performing, and really taking into account, okay, can I create a very similar condition? Is there going to be drafts in the room? Is the air conditioning on? Do I have to close the vent in the bathroom because the air conditioning's on? You probably know what I'm talking about, especially now that we're in the summer. You really have to think about all these different factors that come into play. You have to think about, okay, my candle's starting to struggle. The flames are starting to struggle. Maybe I trimmed the wicks down too short. So these are all different factors that can come into play. It doesn't immediately mean that your candle is going to fail as a whole. It just means that you're collecting information along the way. So a great example of this is that a lot of makers think that if their candle flames move, if they flicker a lot, it's a fail. And I'm here to tell you, I've never owned a single candle that didn't have flickering flames. That's like the whole ambiance of everything. It's doing its thing. There's a huge difference between a candle flame that's dancing and a candle flame that is 2.5 or 3 inches high and it's an inferno and it's like out of control. So there's a huge difference there between a candle flame that is dancing, and yeah, maybe it's gonna get you a little bit hotter as it burns down the candle, but as a whole, what is it doing? How's the jar temperature? How's the melt pool depth? These are all the things that you need to be considering. At what burn is the candle starting to do this? So if the rate of consumption of your candle, which means how fast your candle is burning and how much of that is being dispersed into the air, so you have less and less of the wax as you burn down the candle, that matters too. So I really love to look at those first 3 to 4 burns of a candle is so important for me. And that's why I'm so back and forth with the whole wickless testing, start with like the half jar testing. I feel like that can give you a good starting point, but again, you always want to start from the top of the candle because that is going to affect how the candle is going to perform as it gets halfway down. And again, I do understand that does save time on materials and things like that. You get a good understanding of how the candle is burning halfway through, but definitely whenever you are looking to really pass or fail a candle, go through the entire lifespan, starting from the very top on where you would fill up that candle to, because it gives you way more of an understanding of how the components are all working together. And depending on it's really interesting with candles, how high the wax is. So let's say you have a jar and there's 1/8 of an inch of the actual jar showing and the rest of it is candle. So it's really full up on the jar versus a candle that has 1 inch down. So let's say it has an internal threaded lid and it needs that extra space for the wick in the lid. So there's about 1 inch there. The candle's going to perform differently based on how full that candle starts out as. So if the candle starts out basically right at the rim or down 1 inch or 1.5 inches in the jar, it is going to burn differently because that first burn on the top is going to be different than a first burn starting right here. It's fascinating, right? I love it. It's so cool. So for instance, if you have a candle flame that is dancing, it's flickering, it seems like it's, burning a little hot, I always look at, is this happening on the first burn or the 4th burn or the 7th burn? That matters so much. It's not just looking at it as is, it's thinking about, okay, as a whole, what is this candle doing in this moment? If a candle is showing signs that it is already overwicked, it's already burning too hot during the first burn, that gives you a lot of data and information and a really great observation as you are burning down lower in the candle, because how is that candle performing during the first burn versus subsequent burns. And the things that I look for during the first burn is not necessarily what I look for at subsequent burns after that. So as an example, if I'm observing a candle during a burn test and I think, the flame is a little bit higher than what I would want it to be, but I'm observing the candle as a whole. And the most important thing that I think is that every burn session is unique. The things that you will be looking for during that first burn are very different than what you will be looking for during the 7th burn. So there's very different things. It's not just you're looking for the same things at every single burn cycle. I look for very different things, not very different things, but I tweak it a little bit based on what burn cycle it's at, because I know that the overall behavior of the candle is going to change based on how far down into the jar it's been and how long of a burn cycle it has gone through already. It is going to be a different candle on the 7th burn than it was at the first burn. So as an example, if I see a larger flame on a candle, I'm observing everything. I'm asking myself, what burn is this? And what is the behavior of all the other components happening around it? So let's say there is a flame that is dancing. It is, let's say, the third burn. There is a full melt pool going on, and there is a really big difference between a candle that has a normal jar temperature, a flame that is dancing and may seem a little bit higher than it should be, but a melt pool that is 3/4 of an inch or an 1/8 of an inch. So if it is the end of the 4-hour mark on the third burn and the candle flame is seeming like it is dancing, it's moving, it's flickering, maybe it's a little bit higher than what I would like, but everything else is seeming like it's working together. The melt pool depth is only about an 1/8 of an inch, and the jar temp is perfectly safe. Then we keep moving and we just keep that going as data. And we keep an understanding of, okay, what could be going on? Is there a draft going on? Is it just the way that the components are working together? Because again, candle making is a scientific experiment. We are throwing random chemical components, different things together and seeing how they are reacting together, which is, again, part of the fun part of it, but it's also part of the part that we're just trying to still figure out. So when it comes to that, we're just observing. And I want you to think as a scientist when you are going through your burn testing. Yes, there are things that you will automatically fail, but I think that candles are being failed too early for these little observations. The same thing goes for sooting, for when a candle does not reach full melt during a burn cycle, and for mushrooming. These are all things that aren't necessarily an immediate fail of the candle. If a wick is starting to mushrooming, okay, at what part of the burn cycle is it mushrooming? Is it the first burn within 2 hours? It has a huge mushroom? That's a huge issue. Is it the 8th burn and you're noticing that it's a mushroom because it's way further down in the jar and you notice that naturally the candle is going to burn hotter at that time and there's going to be more carbon buildup? Has the wick been trimmed before lighting? Most of us, yes, we are going to do that as candle makers when we're going through the burn testing. Was the candle not trimmed short enough, or was it trimmed too short if the candle is tunneling? There are all these different factoring components that could, I don't want to say it's going to ruin your burn testing, but there's a lot of these individual components that could make a huge difference in the overall outcome of your candle burn test. And the final thing I wanted to bring up in this video is I want you to look for patterns of behavior with your candle, not just isolated incidents where you're noticing a little bit of soot here and there coming off the candle. Let's say it's the very end of the 4-hour burn cycle and you are noticing a little bit of soot here and there coming off of the flame. I don't think that that's a huge deal. What I do think is a huge deal is an hour into the first or second burn and there is almost a continuous stream of soot, or like every half a second it's coming off of the wick. That I do think is an issue. But if it's a little bit of you open up the door, there's soot, there's movement, it's going to happen with every single candle. I don't care if you use all soy, I don't care if you use coconut, I don't care all the marketing things of everybody saying that it's not gonna soot. You can make any candle soot for any reason. You can not trim the wick, you can put on a draft, you can have, I don't know, like just let it burn for so long that it just gets really hot. There's a carbon buildup on it. There are so many things that can cause soot to happen. And I feel like this can be a natural part of the candle burning process. What's the difference though is that how consistent is it and how much of it is there? If it's occasional, then that is one thing, but if it's constant, then that's another thing. I could talk about this all day, and in fact, I made a whole class about it. I made a whole class about burn testing. If you want to know more, if you want to join me in my class next week, I'm hosting it Tuesday night, July 21st at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and I'm going to help you get out of the testing phase. It's going to be a full breakdown of troubleshooting, figuring out how to fix your candles, understand your candles, and know what to fix so that you can finally get past it and finally launch your candle business. Also, don't forget to download my free candle testing sheet down below in the pinned comment. And with that, I'm going to end today's video right here, and I will see you in the next one.